every time I do one of these events and Sara comes along, I'm always just blown away because, and she says she really enjoys these events, and it's such a treat to have Sara coming along. Not only has she got this incredible wisdom, and I've never listened to one of her talks and not learned a hell of a lot. She's just, well, she's absolutely lovely. Sara Pugh.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Phil. So today we're going to be looking at something called the mitochondria because it's very relevant and important for keto diets. And I do like talking about quantum biology and physics, but also there's a lot that I haven't had a chance to ever tell anybody or talk about with different kinds of keto and carnivore diets. So I actually just got back from Atlanta because I go to America quite a lot for different reasons. I had to do a talk there, and my goddaughter, who is non-verbal autistic, lives there as well, and you'll hear a bit about her in this talk. But also I came back especially for my friend who organised a big event, but it happened to be a vegan event, and I already agreed to speak at it. And it went really, really well, and you might think, what was I doing there? And they didn't lock me in a room and count my farts or make me poo in a glass-bottomed toilet to check if I was vegan or not. They were absolutely lovely, and they were really receptive, because what we talked about was, is food the only source of energy? We talked about, is the sun trying to kill us? Why are we made of so much water? Do mitochondria and bacteria control the world, really? We talked about magnetism, we talked about things like telepathy, clairvoyance, and the physics of that. So you can imagine they were totally happy with that. Then this is something that I was going to talk with Phil about. I had to come out to a song, and I wasn't even ready. It was one of those kinds where I had a stage. So I had to plug my phone in, and it was meant to choose something out of my YouTube saved playlist, which I've downloaded. So luckily it didn't choose a Bart K video. But what happened was it just played Vanessa Paradis, Joe Taxi somehow, when it was meant to be Snap, I've Got the Power, because we're going to talk about the mitochondria and power. So I think they're a bit confused, thinking, oh, is she going to speak in French or something? But other than that, they were very friendly. So, and also, you can do vegan keto, and some of them actually even asked me about that. So, as I was saying, my goddaughter she's a non-verbal, and some people may have heard of a podcast now called the Telepathy Tapes. It's got really massive about these tests they've done on autistic children being telepathic. Because about 15 or 20 years ago, I knew all about this, but of course I was a crackpot, regardless of what Rupert Sheldrake said about telepathy. So for these kind of subjects, there is quite a hunger for learning about telepathy or remote viewing or clairvoyance, but unfortunately I'm not going to have a chance to talk about that today. So what I'm going to talk about is, as I've said, food, but also mitochondria and some physics. So my background is biochemistry and genetics, and then I did a PhD in molecular mechanisms. I'll tell you why I left science, because it relates to statins and hearts. And then also I'm a board certified quantum biology practitioner, which doesn't really mean anything. It is an actual thing that Americans like to make, how they like having words and power words for everything. But as we go through what is quantum, you'll realize it's a lot of what Mary was talking about ancestral living, light, water, magnetism. And I was a hypnotist, and I've also done movement and Pilates and yoga, so that'll be incorporated a bit. I mean, you'll think, how can you link Pilates to keto diets? So we all agree there are lots of pillars of health, and everything works, and there's lots of rights. When I was talking at the Vegan Festival, we focused on the first two columns, which was water, light, magnetism, and spirituality. I appreciate that there's nervous system regulation. Mary covered that really well. Then movement, which I'm not going to talk about today. And then we've got things like chemistry, which I would say would be supplements. People like Richards, he covered supplements very well. Toxins and detoxes, that would come under chemistry. But we are going to talk about biology, which would be nutrition, but also lab tests, things like, and also CGMs, measuring ketones. So what's on the menu? As I've said, I think mitochondria is something very pivotal that we need to learn about, the little engines inside us. And also the Keto Diet Chronicles. I'm just going to talk to you about, I first did a keto diet in my early 20s, and I'll talk through some experiences I've had with it. And then what I want to emphasize is that views are like breasts, they change with age. And I do, as I progress and learn, I do change my mind. And I'm not as bad as Cole Robinson about changing his mind. I do really like Cole, but it does seem to be it's different all the time. If you've never heard of the snake diet, man. So sometimes it might have been something I thought 20 years ago and really believed truly. And I think we can all resonate with that. But I think it's an important part of developing our knowledge. Just accept, okay, you got it wrong, it doesn't matter, now you know something different which might be wrong as well. So I did my first keto diet in 1999, and I was an undergraduate then, and Dr. Atkins, this was actually his second book, because the Atkins diet was popular in the 70s. So he didn't die of a heart attack, he actually had a fall. So that's people who like to trash the Atkins and say, oh yeah, he died from all that bacon and cheese. No, he didn't. And he had an interesting idea that food compulsion isn't a character disorder, it's a chemical disorder. So he was one of the first people that started talking about how changing the way you eat can actually change how your neurochemistry behaves towards food. And then, as here is just my little, I'm saying what a doctor would say to their medical students, you know, here we are students, this is the proper diet, not these silly keto fads. And Dr. Atkins, or Robert Atkins, he was an MD as well. Then I did a second keto diet a bit later on with another Dr. Atkins, who was a psychiatrist, which is a massively long story, which I'm not going to go into because it's too long. But it's just, I used the first keto diet just for weight management, and the second one was more for a medical reason. So if we think now, well, how popular are ketogenic diets? Is it a fad, and is it going to get more popular? So the keto diet's expected to have a value of 15.27 billion by the year 2007. And even in 2021, the stats that I could get were 23 million Americans that do a keto diet. So it's definitely not going away. It's going to get more popular, and there's going to be more things to come out to try and get people to buy what I call keto crap or confuse people. And also, if people say, oh no, it's not studied properly, that's complete nonsense as well, because there's over 6,000 papers on ketogenic diets starting. I think I found one or two even back in the 1930s. So this isn't new at all. So when we think about keto diets, there's sort of these traditional kinds that people might call a 2-to-1 or a 4-to-1, that those would be the very medical ones for things like epilepsy. Those have been around a long time. Then there's things like a modified Atkins diet where the protein gets controlled a bit more. There's an MCT oil keto diet. And then there are things like low carb. And these are all the ones in the boxes, these are ones that there's published data about. And then there's even more keto diets again, because fasting is a keto diet. Then we've got low carb. Then we've got things like the very low calorie ketogenic diet, which is a bit like the protein sparing fast. And there's published data on that being very beneficial for lots of medical conditions. That's not sustainable, but it doesn't mean it's not useful. Then we've got cyclical keto diets where people will do keto and then maybe every 10 days, every month, every week, reintroduce a small amount of carbs, which can be anything from fruit or people just maybe wanting to have a meal with their family. So there's reasons why that can be helpful and useful. Then there's ketovore, which they tend to measure ketones, and it's more like a 2-to-1. And the 2-to-1 means 2 grams of fat to every 1 of protein and carbs. So it's kind of quite mathematical. Some people's brains love maths and working stuff out and counting things. Other people, that's never going to happen. And I want to, in this talk, show you how there's so many different sorts of keto diets, and they do have medical validation, and not to get too hung up on am I doing it right, or get I know people who've been bullied out of being carnivore online because maybe they ate a spoon of honey or an apple or something. And then we've got the carnivore, which is different again because it's going to be a different ratio to fat and protein than some of the others. And for somebody who wants to do this way of living but doesn't like maths or doesn't understand biology, if you just say, just eat meat and fish and eggs and dairy just to get them started, that's really simple. Or you can just say to them, we'll just eat meat and just leave them at that. And sometimes a really simple approach can be a stepping stone into a different way of living for people. So then if we come to quantum, it's like, well, what does that mean? So it's basically the smallest measurable amount of, say, something like matter, or in this case, energy, because something like a photon of light, that's what we would call quantized in the body. So that means, or it's quantized as in general in physics or optics, but photons in the body means that our bodies can quantize light or have a quantity and send it round the body for very intricate, powerful signaling at the speed of light. And then phonons, they're just a packet of sound in liquid. And people who are into things like sound baths or tuning forks or sound therapy or other kind of therapists, even if they've never heard of a phonon before, that's how something's working at a more deep level. Because when I don't understand something, which is most things, I like to try and find the basic principles and then build up from there to work out how stuff works or it might work. Then the other thing that quantum could be is behavior at the atomic or subatomic level. And because we're going to talk about mitochondria, we have to talk about electrons and protons or hydrogen. And then a deuterium, which I'm going to talk about, is a sort of isotope of hydrogen, a heavy hydrogen. So this could be counted as quantum as well. And then we've got things like quantum phenomena, whether it's big things doing it, which we'll get to that in a moment, or small things like electrons doing something called tunneling, which they do in the mitochondria. So they're basically moving through matter. So it would be like me tunneling through the wall, or a human teleporting or bilocating. Then we've got other quantum phenomena like entanglement that people have heard about, because for lay people that would mean action at a distance like healing or clairvoyance or telepathy. But the body does lots and lots of things of action at a distance, and things are entangled. So I'm not going to make this about physics. I'll make it as less physicsy as possible. But there are certain things that people, if they're interested in learning about the body and their health, it is worth learning a few terms. So even if you just remembered a photon of light and an electron and a proton, that's going to help you when we talk a bit more about the mitochondria. And then to me, what quantum biology or quantum health means, it's the way to influence the body without using drugs. So can we use light, like a red light panel, to lower blood sugar? Can we use light and magnetism to make a cancer cell go back to being normal again, rather than trying to kill it with radiation or cutting it out? And there's a whole host of other examples of different things that are not drugs or food that you can use that will change biology. So in some ways, that's why quantum biology is going to be one of the medicines of the future. So as you can imagine, the pharmaceutical companies don't like quantum biology because it's going to really pressurize and challenge them. So let's think about our bacteria in our body for the moment. So when we think about our microbiomes, so we've got a gut microbiome, a skin microbiome, a blood microbiome, an anal microbiome, a mouth microbiome, a vaginal microbiome, and they're all bacteria that live there. And it was great to come on after Mary because you had a microbiome festival and feast. These bacteria alone outnumber our human cells 2 or 3 to 1. So already we can see, oh, hang on a minute, there's more of them than there are of our own cells. But if we add the mitochondria in as well, which is like a relic of a bacteria that lives inside cells, there are 300 to 1 of our cells. So this is kind of now, well, hang on a minute, I'm not even really human anymore. So this really is how the bacteria and the bugs can control us. And I don't even know how many bacteria there are on the planet. Maybe I'll have to ask ChatGPT to guess or something, because it does like to hallucinate and make up stuff, but sometimes it's reasonably helpful. And the key thing here is when we talk about food and electrons and protons, when we eat food, it's going to end up in the mitochondria as electrons and protons, so it's like the end of the chain. So with these mitochondria, as I said, they're like a relic of a bacterium, and when it comes to evolution and everything, there's lots of different views and opinions, and opinions can be a bit like bad lube, that it can get very messy for no reason at all very quickly. So we have to just be careful about talking about evolution, because actually nobody does know. But the best thing we can talk about with the mitochondria is, very likely, a long time ago, a cell needed something to come and live inside it to make power, because biology can make power out of all sorts of things. It can make power out of iron, it can get power out of ultraviolet light, it can get power out of oxygen and things like that. So what happened was, there was this arrangement. The mitochondria could come and live in this cell, and the rules were, you make energy for me and a few other things, and you can come and live inside me, and I'll make a home around you and feed you and look after you. That's in simple terms is probably the best explanation for how the mitochondria got in the cell. The other thing with mitochondria is they're not just the powerhouse. They make other things, not just ATP, because that's not the main energy source in the body anyway. They make things like hormones, like pregnenolone, and out of pregnenolone we get all of our sex hormones, like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, so they can make sex hormones for us. They can also make neurotransmitters, like dopamine, and they make melatonin. Most of it's for themselves, but we'll learn why melatonin is not just a really important sleep molecule in a moment. And also, the mitochondria, they do something called beta oxidation, which is how fat is ultimately burnt and used as energy in the body. And something called the TCA, or tricarboxylic acid cycle, happens in the mitochondria as well, and that's the second stage of breaking down sugar. So, because some people like things more in a picture form, and you may or may not be able to see the screen. I think we're recording this, so some of it will be available if people want to look at pictures later. So what goes into the mitochondria? There's going to be food, but also light. That's really important for them, because they live right inside our cells. So how do they know what's going on the outside world? They rely on us going outside, getting signals from the light from the sun through our eyes and on our skin. And then this light signal gets propagated through the body by something called nonlinear optics. And cholesterol participates in this light transferring procedure. So there's so much I could tell you about cholesterol, and that's one thing that it does. So anyway, the mitochondria, light needs to go in. They basically bathe in an ocean of water, so water is very important in how they function as well. And also, they can get electrons, not just from food, but also from, say, things like grounding or structured water, and then other methods of how we can get energy out of our environment. And then, as I said before, what comes out is water, a special kind of deuterium-depleted water. Energy is ATP, then carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide isn't a poisonous gas, it's a really important signaling molecule in the body. And I could do like probably 2 hours of talking about how carbon dioxide is a really important molecule for signaling. It also ties into a fear response, all sorts of things. And there are lots and lots of even studies by people like Buteyko who've cured a wide range of illnesses using breathing techniques. Everyone's heard of Wim Hof and those kind of people who, by using their breath training, can sit outside in the ice completely naked for hours and hours and not even get frostbite. But if you want to look into breathing a bit more, people like James Nestor and Anders Olsen is a good start, because again, carbon dioxide is just a gas, and people dismiss it because they think, oh, that can't be possibly anything important, but it really is. And here it's like, yes, it's a keto festival, but it's also a healing festival, and sometimes the food isn't enough and you have to add in other things as well. It also, mitochondria make light as photons or biophotons, which is a bit like laser light in the body in specific amounts. So they can talk to each other, and the mitochondria talk to our DNA as well, and the immune system. Because remember, there's 300 of the mitochondria for every one of your cell. So you've got your nucleus and your DNA, but they have their own DNA as well. So actually, more of our DNA in number is actually mitochondrial. Then if we think, what happens is with nature, when you start to look at nature and become a truth seeker or want to learn, you'll find that the same patterns start to repeat over and over in nature. If it gets a good idea, it'll just get repeated again. And some people, and everybody has different ideas of what as above and so below mean. And what I find really interesting is if you break down the electronics of a mitochondrion, it's actually like a capacitor, so it can hold a huge amount of charge, and it can actually hold 20 times more charge than a bolt of lightning, which I find pretty impressive. So one way we can think about the mitochondria, what they do, they can compress charge into biochemistry. So that's one way of thinking about how they work. Then if we think about the mitochondria as, say, a capacitor, and we pretend it's something electrical, what do you think would happen if we didn't have enough of certain kind of lipids, like cholesterol, for example, which is in all our cell membranes, if we are dealing with a bioelectronic thing like a mitochondria or our own cells? So what do you think? If we take all the cholesterol out of something, do you think it's going to affect like maybe insulation? So it'd be like taking some of the insulation off electrical wires. So we can imagine how bad that would be in our own houses. So there's numerous ways to get rid of these straw man arguments about why cholesterol's bad, why is fat bad. So we do actually use some of our LDL to stabilize the inner mitochondrial membrane, and LDL goes up when people go into hospital or get stressed because the mitochondria are stressed. So they want the LDL there to insulate themselves more so they can keep making power and water and all the things they do for you. And this can partly be why there are some of these ridiculously crazy cholesterol numbers, because the best time to catch people and draw blood and measure them is when they're captive in somewhere like a hospital. So lots of these readings of high LDL is the person was mega stressed, but then they were in the hospital because they weren't well. So then by just being an idiot in some ways and reductionist, people think, okay, you must have high cholesterol because you're ill, not oh, this person's cholesterol is high because they're adapting to being extremely stressed in the hospital or in the doctors or having their bloods drawn. So now we'll get into a bit more about the mitochondria, because some people are quite familiar with my work or have seen my other talks. So we did a whole talk just on deuterium for one of Phil's events. We've also talked a bit about EZ or exclusion zone water. Then I may or may not have mentioned about something called compressing the electron transport chain. And some people might have any idea at all about what even an electron transport chain is. And then by the end of what I'm going to tell you about mitochondria, hopefully this mess of slide will start to mean some sense or make some sense to you. Right, so I already said the mitochondria make water. So what? Does what you eat mean you're going to make different amounts of water? So the answer is yes. Because fat has more electrons than glucose, and people have known about mitochondria for a very long time, we know that fat will make, we'll say, 1 equivalent of water. Glucose makes 0.5 equivalent, so half, and then protein is somewhere in between, about 0.65 or something like that. So straight away we can see, well, actually, if we're 70 or 65 or 60% water, and this water that you'll learn about soon is very much linked to our energy levels, surely it's not difficult to compute. Well, actually, if I just lived on sugar all the time and ate loads of carbs, I'm not going to be making enough water on mitochondria, so I'm going to have true dehydration, and there's lots of linkages to different illnesses to this. So yes, it is really important that the mitochondria make water, and the water they make is low in deuterium, and yes, what you put in your mouth will make a different amount of water in your mitochondria. Then, when we talk about this fourth phase of water, or coherent water, or exclusion zone water, it's not liquid water like bulk water in the glass, and it's not ice, and it's definitely not steam. It's a kind of water that you weren't taught about at school or at university, because all of the really useful and interesting things that I learned after I left university, because the university and that system, just to be politely, is a big sausage factory and an echo chamber of bullshit as well, because all of the people that work and teach in university back each other up. And biochemists like myself, I had lots of medical students who I had to look after, and because they used to come in the lab and do intercalating projects. So the bullshit, unfortunately, gets echoed all over the place. And then later on, you find out there is a whole other world of science and biology that isn't taught. So with this fourth phase, a quote from Dr. Gerald Pollack, he says, "Death may be the point when the cell loses its structured water, the exclusion zone collapses, and charge separation fails." So the reason this water is so useful and interesting is the fourth phase of water can charge separate into positive and negative. And we all kind of we all know and have seen a battery and know that it has a positive and a negative terminal. So this water can behave, or does behave, like a battery in our bodies. And you don't need any kind of randomized control study to know this, because it's just physics, and this is what it does. And Dr. Pollack and others have published lots of papers on this kind of water, and there's a whole world of water science and research. It's not sexy to study water, so it's just not very well funded, unfortunately, because you can't make a drug out of fourth phase water. It kind of gets rid of pharmaceutical straw men. So with this exclusion zone water, it's found pretty much everywhere inside your body. And first of all, just in simple terms, we can think the more EZ water we've got, the bigger our battery's going to be, so the more potential difference. So even if somebody's not sciencey, we've all had technology where, oh, my phone died, or my light is flickering on and off, so we can understand that analogy. Then the nature of the exclusion zone, when the charge separates, it makes sort of like a barrier, so things can't get through. And this is why exclusion zone water in the gut's really important, because leaky gut is a big problem for a lot of people. And this exclusion zone water also lines the arteries. And when we lose our exclusion zone in our arteries, it's a humongous risk for getting things like atherosclerosis or damage to the endothelial lining. And also the water dynamics in this fourth phase of water, the way in which water actually flows in vessels has been shown to be able to make clots and atherosclerosis. So all this nonsense about cholesterol, people are too focused on what's in the blood, not how the blood's moving, or how it's behaving on a physics level. So also this ability of the EZ water to make barriers, it's a way to protect us from toxins and things like that, because we all know people that just do everything wrong, and you'd think they'd be full of mercury or whatever, but when you do tests and things, they're squeaky clean. And then you find out they do stuff like they have an outdoor job, because this water battery, or our EZ water, one of the key things is it's charged by light, or near infrared light. And Dr. Pollack's, one of his most recent papers was all about how blood can flow when the heart has been switched off. He was doing it in chick embryos, the experiment, obviously not people, but it's a very pivotal paper to show there's so much that we don't understand about blood flow, and I think the medical profession and big pharma actually don't want us to know, because like I said, they don't like quantum biology, because if you can use things that aren't drugs to be healthy, including food, they don't like that. Then their brain, it contains the most exclusion zone water in the body, and if you lose exclusion zone water in your brain, which is like a quantum computer basically, and you lose the charge that comes with this water can also convey information at an extremely fast rate. But just for now, we'll focus on the charge. It's going to cause things like brain fog, things like bipolar, which depend on energy. And then I would think back to myself, well, hang on a minute, with ketogenic diets, it's really good for things like dementia, really good for lots of brain disorders. So actually, we'll have I was going to bring some things for a prize draw, and we'll have a quiz question soon, because I've actually genuinely forgotten. What's the name of the doctor who does all of the keto and mental... Oh, sorry, Chris Palmer. Sorry, we'll have to have a different question later for our quiz. Yeah, so Chris Palmer, he's the one who people have heard of for all about mental health and keto. So now we understand about water and how a keto diet can make more water, and we know about charge. This can actually be another way in which, okay, well, maybe it's not just the ketones, maybe it's the water or something else as well. Because if you give people with bipolar or dementia just loads of ketone salts, they pretty much just stay the same all the time. They have to actually, there's more to it than that. Now we'll go inside the mitochondria. So I'll try and describe it for people, even if you can't see the picture. The picture very well. So the electron transport chain. You have to imagine a membrane, and in it are 5 proteins, and the electrons are going to go down this electron transport chain. So we'll call it an electric current for the moment. And as these electrons go down the electron transport chain, they're going to push some protons or hydrogen up into a different part of the membrane. So straight away now we can see, oh, we've got a potential difference, and then we've got some electric current flowing. When the electrons get to the 4th complex, the oxygen that we breathed in becomes something called the terminal electron acceptor. Then we've got other protons in the mitochondria, and they combine together to make water. So that's how we make this water. Then there's a 5th protein or obstacle, or this particular one's different to all the others. This one spins, and it's called the ATPase, and this is the one that makes ATP. And some of those protons that got pushed by the electrons up, it's a bit like hydroelectrics. It gets pushed up, and then it's going to fall down through the ATPase, and then it's going to make ATP. So this, in a nutshell, is how the mitochondria work. And if you try and learn something like this out of a biochemistry textbook, it's the most confusing thing ever on the planet. Whereas to me, after many years of iterations of how can I teach science to people, I sometimes think, okay, if I can teach somebody about oxidative phosphorylation, which is what this is, and they can understand as a layperson, this whole process, you can spend like 3 months being massively confused by biochemistry books, and still people graduate and have absolutely no idea really about how mitochondria work. So there we go. So we've got our little system. So how can we break the electron transport chain? So if you come across podcasts or certain people, some people like to follow quantum biology and Jack Kruse, and they will have heard of the ETC, or electron chain transport. So how do we break it? Well, we can break it with barbiturates, because they block complex number 1, and now the electrons can't flow anymore. So what happens when people take too many barbiturates? That's the end of them. And we've known this for a long time. Then also, if we use cyanide, that will block complex 4, and then we all know what happens with cyanide as well. So we can see now how there's a really important sort of connection with life and energy, because for a long time biochemists have worked out this electron transport chain by using different things to block these complexes. But in a simple way to explain to somebody why it's really important to look after your mitochondria is sort of using chemicals that we're all familiar with of what happens, but then showing, okay, this is what happens deep in the mitochondria at the sort of level of physics. Then we can now think about, well, what happens if there's inflammation or dysfunctional mitochondria, or the membrane swollen because for some reason it's been damaged, or there's too many of the wrong kind of free radicals escaping. So now we've got the electron transport chain swollen or expanded. So what happens now is, it's a bit like people doing an obstacle course. It's just going to take longer for them to get to the end, and electrons are really lazy and will take the path of least resistance. Like people, we're all lazy. So if the electron transport chain's too spread out, the amount of time it takes for them to get to the end is going to be much more, and time actually plays a big role in the physics of aging. People focus a lot on sort of other biological aspects of aging, and I don't think the route that people like Brian Johnson take is truly the solution to the aging problem, because actually even physicists don't know what aging or life force is. So this is what happens when we've got mitochondrial dysfunction. The electrons they're not going to get to the end. They're going to escape out of the electron transport chain, and this is what we'd call a free radical, which then leads to things like oxidative stress or inflammation or aging or low energy or all the other diseases associated with mitochondrial problems, which is basically 85% of chronic disease has something to do with mitochondria, probably more. So in this situation, when the mitochondria is all swollen and the electrons are escaping and creating inflammation, we make less water and ATP. When people eat a lot of glucose all the time, the first complex, number 1, is actually naturally quite leaky for a reason, because nature doesn't make mistakes. But if you just constantly eat loads of glucose all the time, you're constantly running electrons, because the mitochondria can tell the difference of whether the electron came from fat or sugar. They're much cleverer than we are. If you're keeping on and on and on running these electrons through complex 1, they're going to escape and make a load of free radicals. Whereas the electrons from fat, they skip over the first complex, they cheat, and they come in the second complex. And that's another reason why fat is a less inflammatory fuel than glucose. It doesn't matter if people eat a cake sometimes, or some people include apples or other sugar and stuff into their keto or carnivore diets, because there are certain people and certain times when it is okay to run it through the electrons through complex 1, because it's going to make loads of free radicals and kill off a load of old mitochondria. So for people who think, oh, if I choose to do carnivore or keto, I'm trapped in this prison forever, and as soon as I eat an apple, I've ruined everything. It doesn't work like that. But like everything, we're all individuals, and there are some people who love keto and carnivore. It works for them. There's nuances. So now if we think about this the other way, so if we do something like cold plunges or cold thermogenesis, which is known to have anti-aging benefits, lots of different animals and creatures have been investigated, and there are also even some human studies now. It's difficult to do aging studies on humans, but people have started to collect the data and the markers. So what the cold does, it makes the mitochondria cold, so they heat up or uncouple or try harder. This heats a bit of the water that they're bathing in, or all of the systems bathing in, and when at certain conditions, when you heat water, it's actually going to expand a bit, so it's going to squash all of this electron transport chain closer together. So now we've got the complete opposite of eating too much glucose. We've squashed the electron transport chain together, so the lazy electrons can much more easily get to the end, make the ATP, make the water, and also they can push more protons up to make the voltage better. So we can easily see, now we understand the mitochondria. Oh yeah, that's how why cold is anti-aging. Also, melatonin that we make ourselves, or the mitochondria make, that also compresses the electron transport chain. So it's well known that lack of melatonin and bad sleep causes a whole host of horrible diseases, including cancer. So if people are bathing in blue light at night or on their phones until 2 or watching Netflix and they're not making enough melatonin, now we can see, oh yeah, I'm not compressing my electron transport chain enough, and the electrons are escaping and making inflammation. So it starts to make sense of how really bad sleep or artificial light at night and shift work is a really terrible recipe for health. Very interestingly also, a ketogenic diet is mildly uncoupling as well, so we get some of the same effect that uncoupling I won't go into it in detail, but in simple terms, the mitochondria work in a different way and produce more heat. So when you do a keto or a carnivore diet that is ketogenic, you get a little bit of the same effect as the melatonin and the cold. You squash the electron transport chain together and it makes the electron flow better. And there's papers on this. I just haven't put references in here because it kind of makes the slide messy and nobody reads them anyway or looks them up. So you can, if you wanted them, I can get them all for you. But I'm involved in a really exciting project with Ben Bickman and David Jockers and Neil Geit, all to do with collating proper scientific information, checking it, and then making it available, sort of like for people to access as resources, so people are not being bamboozled by stupid articles about carnivore and keto in newspapers or stupid things that ChatGPT tells them. Right, so we've nearly got to the end of the mitochondria section. So that the last bit about the physics in the mitochondria, we've got the we don't want a lot of deuterium in the mitochondria, because deuterium's like in simple language, just a big hydrogen. So it's not toxic or evil or nasty, and it's an important part of the universe and stars and the planet. It's just we don't want it in the mitochondria. Because what'll happen is that little motor I was telling you about that spins, that an ordinary sized proton or hydrogen is supposed to go down and be part of this spinning. If a deuterium tries to go down, it's going to get stuck and cause stalling. And this is Professor Abdullah Olgan's work. And because it then is going to break the ATPase, the whole mitochondria is going to get massively stressed out now and pump out a load of inflammatory and alarm signals, and it'll eventually kill the mitochondria. And then if you kill lots of mitochondria in a particular tissue, then you're going to get things like weak heart, liver issues and all sorts. So we don't want deuterium in the mitochondria. In another talk I did for one of Phil's events, we do have a checkpoint called the tricarboxylic acid, or the Krebs cycle, to pick off the deuterium. But when people overload themselves with the deuterium, our biology can't cope anymore. And then Dr. Gabor Somely, he's a Hungarian, and he's spent 30 years of his life looking at deuterium-depleted water and different mechanisms of hydrogen and deuterium in the body. And he's measured the deuterium content in lots of foods, as have other people. So everything that's high in deuterium, we can guess straight away. So glucose has a deuterium count of 155 parts per million. Fat is between about 109 and 120. For good health, we want to be at around about 125 to 135. So straight away, just looking at these numbers, if people just lived on a high carb diet all the time, you can say, well, hang on a minute, that deuterium, that's going to get a bit high over time. And then they've compiled, or people have compiled over time, and I've contributed some to it, all the high deuterium foods. So you can imagine what it is, things like bread, gluten, sugar. Beans are high in deuterium because it's the plant's baby, and deuterium also has other useful things for plants and small organisms. It's a growth factor, so we can also link deuterium to cancer, but these studies have been going on since the 1930s on the adverse effects of deuterium on biological organisms. So even if you don't understand any of what I said, and just remember that fat's very low in deuterium, and you're thinking about doing a ketogenic diet, and you know that deuterium's going to harm mitochondria and is linked to cancer, for some people that can be like the tipping point. Oh yeah, I'm going to give this keto thing a go. And then I've only put the really high deuterium foods. Things like seed oils are insane. It's something like 250 parts per million of deuterium or more. So even people like, say, vegans, there's no reason that they all buy into the whole seed oil nonsense. So that's, for somebody starting out, just getting rid of seed oils, I would say, is probably the best start, and then just move on from there. And then the questions are, because some people know what mitochondria are anyway, and others are like, well, I didn't even know these existed, but I'm interested, how do I look after them? So the first thing would be, or one of the things is timing. Everything in the body has to be done on time, and the master clock in our eye, the SCN, tells all the other clocks in the body what to do, including the genes and all sorts. And the mitochondria also need to know what time it is, because they have loads of tasks, like you discovered, from burning fuel. They play a role in things like autophagy. They make hormones and neurotransmitters, so they need to know what time it is. So a good circadian rhythm and light environment's important, because also mitochondria need a red light and near infrared light. That's why people buy red light panels. But then the sun makes red light all the time, and it makes near infrared even in the night. So we need good light hygiene. Then we want to also feed our mitochondria appropriate food, because all food's going to end up in them. Then artificial blue light, as in LEDs, screens and things like that, the message that gets into the mitochondria affects the complex 4, the water-making one. So being around things like that is going to be dehydrating. And also there are toxins and medications and things which are mitochondrial toxins as well. And also sleep, again, is really important, because we do something called mitophagy when we sleep, which is like autophagy, which is getting rid of old and damaged cells. Mitophagy is killing off old and damaged mitochondria to make place for new ones. So it's a bit like getting rid of old bangers and classic cars off the road, because they use a lot of fuel and don't go very far, but make a lot of pollution. I love classic cars, by the way, so I'm not trying to offend anybody who's got one. I might even get another one after the Yaris falls apart, but it's just an analogy. So with the mitophagy, this, like autophagy, happens at night, and melatonin is very important for controlling and encouraging mitophagy and autophagy. So again, you have to sleep properly in order to let your mitochondria do their thing. I might skip over this a bit, because I'm a bit aware of time. So what is aging and what is life force? Well, actually, nobody knows fully. We have got lots of ideas. It's got something to do with light, water, magnetism, but also it's much deeper than that. It's to do with fundamentally things being controlled by electric charge, that when we lose the charge or our battery in our body collapses, then so do we. But there's also still exactly what human life force is, whether you want to call it chi or prana or whatever. There's still, we don't know. So anybody that pretends to know everything about anti-aging and have all of these fancy bits of equipment that we don't know, even physicists and mathematicians don't know. And it may be in my lifetime we'll discover it, because if we knew what chi and life force was, a machine would exist that we could plug a person in and just charge them back up again. So that's why I know that we don't really understand aging, our life force. And physicists agree as well. It's something that people are very interested in, and it will be something to do with physics, all of it. So Nikola Tesla, as people would probably have heard of, would say if you want to understand everything, you need to look at energy, frequency and vibration. So he's just saying that the world is electromagnetic, so we need to look at things through a charge lens or a light lens if we want to know the truth. And then gravity is something that people never consider, but gravity can make a voltage, because when a seed's going to germinate, it lines itself up with a gravitational field, so it can get some charge or some voltage from the gravity so it can germinate. So there's lots of things that people have no idea about to do with energy, and I'm always learning something new every day. Oops. So then this leads into why food isn't our only source of energy. It's only about 30 to 40%. And then the other 60 to 70% comes from things like light, water, as in now you know about the water battery, magnetism, then we've got charge, and then there are other things which feed into this as well. And then Dan Winter, some people may have heard of him, some people not, is a polymath, and he will just say the definition of life is the ability to gather in or bring in charge and then retain it. So there is a lot of people you can look into if you think, oh, this is really interesting, I've never heard of any of this before, I'm going to go in this rabbit hole. And then it's also the myth about all our energy comes from food, because we've learnt about the water battery already. Then we can get energy from the sun and be like a solar panel. And my favourite biochemist of all time would be Albert St. Georgi or St. Georgi. He was more than a genius, and even back in the 1940s was talking about the body being bioelectronic, photons controlling the body. He did win a Nobel Prize, but not the rest of his work. He was just tormented, and people tried to shut him up and get rid of him over and over. So it's not this. None of this is new, and there's also plenty of studies like Fritz Popp and Gerwich, even in the 1950s, knew all about how the body can act like a solar panel and how it uses light to communicate. But as you can imagine, it's not popular science because it's against the biochemical paradigm. Then with magnetism, which people just don't consider ever, in simple language, the Earth's magnetic field that we live in, first of all, we're designed to live in this magnetic field, and it's going to do things that if it got taken away, there'd be disastrous effects. Because Dr. Dean Bonnelly did some studies on mice, and he made them live out of an electric magnetic field in something called mu metal cages. And first of all, the mice started eating more. Then some of them just moved slower and slower, and then some even died. So that shows, how important magnetism is. Because what it actually does, or one of the things is, it makes electrons and protons move faster. So it comes back to all of our electric currents in the body and our mitochondria. The mitochondria love magnetism. So the best way to get magnetism is just to go outside. You don't need to take your shoes off. It's different to grounding. And the closer you are to the earth, the better. So everybody who camped here and slept in a tent, you got a good dose of magnetism. Then the aura is a great big cloud of charge, and lots of physicists are massively into things like aliens and telepathy and everything, because we just think that they do maths and stuff like that. But I have moved into a lot of the physics world just to find new people to learn from or talk to. So the aura is a cloud of charge, and some physicists will call it cold plasma. And then people like Professor Konstantin Korotkov, he's Russian. He's probably the person that's studied auras the most. He has a machine for measuring them, and he's a very, very scientific scientist. Everything with him is done in triplicate. It's very regimented. His data's very strong. But because he's Russian, we couldn't have access to his studies for a long time. But luckily, Konstantin travels around and does conferences, and he's written, I think, 13 books, and he's published 300 papers. So he's got his work out. And he was somebody that also did a study on how long does it take the aura to leave the person after death. And he's done all sorts of other studies. But in simple terms, your aura is a cloud of charge, and the more charge we have, the better. And there are lots of things which shrink the aura, make holes in it. I know there are people here who are energy healers, and people might have laughed at them and thought, oh, it's woo-woo. Well, it isn't, because a lot of the time with science and the internet and stuff, people just don't talk to each other. So the idea that physicists are massively into auras might surprise people, but then you know, this is like why I went to talk at a vegan event. I'm really keen to just make new connections and meet new people, because I think a lot of the time we all know things, we just have different words for it, or people poo-poo auras until a physicist like Konstantin Korotkov comes along and gives you like all these equations and explanations for it, and then that can be a big changer for people and their health. And then Tesla and other scientists have been able to get energy out of the ether and make sort of a free energy machine. So this, of course, is absolutely diabolical for things like Shell and BP and all of this nonsense about scarcity and fossil fuels. And there is actually another person, David Schmidt, who's replicated this machine to get energy out of the ether, and he now needs bodyguards. So you can see how there's so many layers of lies that we get told, and the fossil fuel ones and the greenhouse gases and all of that, and the cow farts, just when you break it down to the physics. Actually, Dean Bonnelly, he's passed away now. He's a very intelligent man, and he understood a lot about the Earth, and he said that the Earth losing its magnetic field, which it has done because the poles will flip at some point, is actually the cause of the global warming. And even people in, I think, the Geneva Conventions and things, they actually know this as well, but they just prefer the narrative of the cow farts and things like that. So there's a lot to be said about investigating these kind of physics and things like that, and not just focus on biology all the time. Right, so just very briefly with the ether, like some people call it source or 0 point, or all sorts of things, prana, I've heard all different things. So basically what it is a compressible fluid of charge that's in a way everything's made out of the ether. So it's a hard concept for people to get around, and I'm not going to be able to try and explain it now, but because we are made of ether and we live in it, we don't realize it's here. Like a fish doesn't know what water is because it lives in it. But this idea of ether just being the plus or minus charge, or rarefaction and compression, straight away you can see, oh, plus and minus charge, that equals a battery. Oh yeah, I can see how I could get energy out of the ether. But also there's lots of complicated things of how you link ether and charge and light into matter and mass. So this is, I'm not going to go into this, but this is why I don't participate in the food wars, and I don't want to be involved, and I want to sort of find my own way to talk to people and educate them, is that light is actually, or matter is actually slowed down light, or as David Bohm would say, matter is frozen light. Then we need the plants to do photosynthesis to give food for the animals to eat. So everything in some ways can be just, we can think, oh, it's just made of light. But there's also another physics definition of what mass is, which is rotating charge that's gained inertia. That's another way of describing mass, and that's where time comes in, because the period of rotation of this charge is time, and then there's lots of physics behind actually what aging is. So that's why I'm interested in these kind of subjects. But I think when for people and their relationship with food, a lot of people find they get rid of their food issues by completely changing the narrative or paradigm, or just what they view food is, and how we're made of light and slowed down or frozen light, or we're just some rotating charge that's gained inertia. And then the food is also the same, so it can help people understand why things made in a factory is going to be really distorted, horrible, messy light, whereas lovely things that have grown outside and then been eaten by an animal, it's all fresh, proper food with proper information. But that's for a whole other talk. It's just why I don't want to sort of identify as keto or anything, or carnivore. Right, so we're going to go back to the Keto Chronicles now, because it's important to understand some of the science, but then there's also what things I don't like doing is sharing stuff about my life or what I do, but then there comes a time when it does actually help other people. So with keto diets and things, sometimes you just have to think, well, you know, is it working? How do I feel? Has it like fixed the problem? Do I feel any better? Why did I do it in the first place? Is my inflammation gone? Is my diabetes better? How's the depression? Sometimes you can just know in your own body, but also there can be all sorts of bumpy rides or people not quite doing it right, where a time would come where you might have to measure something like measuring ketones, or measuring blood sugar, which I think is actually more useful than ketones, by using things like a CGM. So yeah, I'm just wearing a CGM here. So we'll see why that's useful in a moment. Right. So we've gone through all these different things to do with different kinds of energy. So can we eat air? Like yes, we can. Like relics of what would have been a human could actually use oxygen and things as energy. So when it comes to actually being a breatharian, it's possible, but it's difficult nowadays. But I do believe that it can be done, that people can exist just on physics and not having to eat food. However, what I'm leading into is a lot of people do fasting and they're not eating any food at all and they feel much better. And fasting is a form of a keto diet. So yeah, so what I've got up here to show you is I used to have a continuous ketone monitor, because the continuous glucose monitor, it'll measure your blood sugar through the day and make peaks, make massive peaks if you ate a cornetto, and if you're keto or carnivore, it kind of makes sort of a hump. So I'm going to show you some CGM data later, but with the continuous ketone meter, people can measure ketones, and what they don't realize is it's not like glucose at all. The ketones can go up because your body made them, but then you might do some exercise, and your body then uses up all the ketones as energy. So when you look in your blood, there aren't any. You didn't get kicked out of ketosis, you just used them as energy. But the continuous ketone meter, I did learn a lot about the patterns of when ketones are coming, and that if people are trying to do weight loss, because we lose our fat, or do fat loss predominantly at night, and we lose the mass as carbon dioxide, looking at ketones during the night can be quite a good way to monitor progress. But also the continuous ketone meter wasn't quite as accurate as it claimed to be, because in the picture it says on the continuous meter it was 2.2, but I have a Keto Mojo which I've had for a very long time, and I think probably is a bit more reliable because the technology's been around longer. The Keto Mojo said ketones of 4, so I think it's a nice idea to have this continuous ketone meter because it can be helpful. But for people who want to measure, I would definitely start with a Keto Mojo first, because there's still caveats with these continuous ketone measurements through the day, because nobody actually knows what the ideal number should be, and then people who can get really obsessive about it. But it's definitely interesting for 2 weeks worth of data collecting. So I just collected some data with the ketone meter when I was doing a fast. So in terms of what's keto and what's going to help me, can I do fasting, as in a person would ask? Yes, fasting, you do make ketones and it's got health benefits, and the mitochondria are going to like that. And then people might say, well, okay, if you've said all this about deuterium in sugar and fat being a better fuel, can I just eat fat all the time? And well, people have tried this and it's like, no, that's not going to work either, because you can actually have too much electron flow and too much ketosis, which actually is really stressful for the body as well. And also it's down to this other myth of, oh yeah, you can just eat as much as you like on keto and carnivore. Maybe some people can, I definitely can't, and I've tried the experiments over and over, and I know lots of other people who've tried the same. Also, when it comes to measuring ketones, say if I ate 5 packs of Carol's amazing French raw butter all at once, I'm going to have massively high ketones, but that's just going to be really unhealthy. So more ketones isn't better. So with Carol and her in her shop, unfortunately, from legal reasons, that we can't import raw milk or butter from France at the moment. So somebody is on purpose stopping us having really good quality raw butter. But back to the point, just eating butter and thinking, oh, I'm going to get massive ketones, that's not a good way to do things. But a fat fast can be massively helpful for somebody who is not used to fasting or just needs to put something in their mouth. So with lots of things, doing something all the time might not be good, but everything I think always has its place. Oh yeah, and that picture there was just some keto sticks, because they can be helpful for people just starting out, because some people hate numbers and they just like to pee on a stick and get very excited because it went a bit pink or purple. But that's great because it keeps people motivated. And yes, there's nuances there, but it doesn't matter. We all have to start somewhere. Then the other thing that you might have come across if you go on the internet, so I try to avoid it, but I think there was a craze about a year ago when people were doing the sardine diet, and oh yeah, you can lose 7 pounds in 10 days just eating sardines. And definitely, of course, it's for likes and clicks and follows and build my account. Fine, that's okay. But then, is that keto? Yes, it is actually, because sardines and mackerel and stuff like that are not massively high in protein, but they are high fat fish. And also, does it have uses? Yes, it does, because it might help somebody get started, but also it's got something called DHA in it, or an omega-3, which has quantum properties. So DHA is really interesting because it can, in the body, turn light, as in UV light, into electric current. And then this particular process means that DHA can help with direct current flow in the body, because as people like Albert St. Georgi and other very smart biologists know, we are bioelectronic. So this DHA is actually very valuable for how we function. So we know that fish oils or DHA might be good for the brain, but sometimes people can't explain why, or why just buying fish oils is not nearly the same as getting the fresh fish, because the DHA that comes from fresh fish is not the same as the DHA in supplements, because the supplements have often been oxidized, mistreated and overheated, so they don't have this special optical properties of being able to turn light into electric current, help in the semiconduction system in the body. So that's one of the reasons why the fish oils, yes, they do help the brain. And if you go and look in the research, half the studies will say, no, it doesn't do anything. And the other half will say, yes, it does. But the real fish is on oysters and proper DHA, fermented cod liver oil, that's still in something we'd call SN2 position. And yes, there are people that go and think, oh, I know, I'll just do a pescatarian keto then, because there's lots of benefits to DHA, but like anything, omega-3s make membranes, they do affect membranes and can make them more fluid. Because when I worked on statins and cholesterol, I also worked with all sorts of other fats and membranes, and the omega-3s were monsters to work with because they had to be shipped in on ice because they're so delicate for heat. So when you want to take in DHA, it's much better to take it in its natural form, because all the proteins and things like manganese and all of the other things which package the DHA in, say, sardines or whatever fish that you like, is going to protect the oils, rather than buying something in plastic that's been sitting around in a lorry for a long time and gone off. And Professor Michael Crawford's the person to look into. He's still alive. I think he's about 96, and he came on my podcast, and it was like talking to a 65-year-old. So he obviously knows something and is on the right path. So he doesn't just eat fish. He just has loads and loads of data on why eating fish is really important. And he's also studied it and other things for about 50 years. All right, so now we're going to go into like the crazy kitchen in Atlanta. So how many people here have a toddler or have had to raise toddlers or children? Pretty much everybody. Okay, how many people have got a really greedy dog that tries to steal everything while you're trying to cook? And how many people have worked with children with special needs, especially Down syndromes, or anybody who has a real food obsession and will try and fight you for it? Yeah, so when I went to Atlanta this time, the parents went away, and I, with the help of somebody else, sometimes looked after the house. So at breakfast, I sometimes had to manage a toddler, a greedy Legoto, and my goddaughter. And I have worked or kind of cooked in that kitchen many times, and often I'll be making eggs and sort of like this, or I'll be doing a waffle, or making stuff all hunched over, and I have to hide stuff in cupboards and places, because as fast as I'm making something, somebody's trying to steal it. So what happened was, I really wanted a cup of tea one day, because I am more of a coffee person, but I just missed Britain. And I borrowed my friend's kettle, and I just put it straight on the hob, and I didn't realise you were meant to plug it into the wall. So all of a sudden I smelt plastic burning, and then there was a toddler screaming, and my goddaughter listening to songs and jumping up and down, and the dog nearly sort of making me do a backflip or something, tripping over. So then I eventually managed to whip this kettle off, and I hid it, and then I threw it away, and I did tell her eventually. So that's kind of the cooking that happens in the kitchen, but it's leading me into keto desserts and keto treats, because I used to make my goddaughter things like keto waffles, and I even made her a keto birthday cake. And there's a whole massive host of keto desserts or treats that you can make. And yes, they are keto. I'd really approach them with caution, because they're not as keto as you might think, and they're very delicious. But it's for people who say, oh, I can't do keto with my child who's got Down syndrome, because I want to give them nice treats. Well, the keto treats, to me, some of the stuff I've made, you couldn't tell it wasn't a real waffle or a real chocolate cake. So there is usages in these keto treats, but it's one of these things, if you want to gain 30 pounds in 30 days, you could do it easily just by feasting on keto treats. And I've got friends and colleagues who love keto desserts, and they all say the same. So it has to be in moderation, but it's not definitely, oh, you can never have a waffle ever again. You're just going to have to make a different recipe. So I can recommend here Beth Zupek-Kania and Denise Potter's book. You can get it from the Charlie Foundation, which has got a massive amount of resources on keto recipes that they've either done themselves or collected from people over the years. And the recipes are free, and it'll tell you exactly how many grams of fat and protein and X, Y, and Z. And it's designed to be simple. And because Beth is an expert in medical ketogenic diets and things like Prader-Willi syndrome, where the children really will eat dog food and even earth. So she's also an expert in ketogenic diets for children with epilepsy. So over, I think, her 20 years, she's collected recipes and things, which a lot of them are on the Charlie Foundation website. So this is back to now, okay, I'm interested in keto. Can you tell me a bit more about keto diets, not just the medical side of it? So there's a whole planet of keto desserts. So I would enter this vortex at your own risk, but it can be massively useful for children, or say people who have to do a ketogenic diet but don't really want to, like some seniors who I've worked with. And if you can make them a cake or a waffle, they don't know whether it's keto or not, because I don't tell them. They don't feel like they're missing out. Then what do I do briefly? So like I said, I started out with just Atkins diet, and then I've farted around with keto diets for a long time. I am actually trained in medical ketogenic diets as well, so I've tried out all of those. And I've just found the 4-to-1s and 3-to-1s were just way too much keto for me. I just couldn't, it wasn't right, but I think they do have their place. So I actually eat raw carnivore and keto. So for some people that might sound really weird, mad, dirty and disgusting, but that's how doing a carnivore diet gets perceived in somebody that, say, just eats a standard American or might be vegetarian. They'll just think, oh my God, eating just meat is so weird and disgusting. So I do raw keto and carnivore, and it started because it was quite a long time ago at a conference. I wasn't in quite a bad place, and I didn't really want to speak to anybody, so I didn't want to have dinner and stuff with them. And that's where I met Dr. Ian Lake and the Unwins and Beth, and they were really, really kind to me, and I'll never forget that. I have said thank you to Jen and David, but I would have liked to have said it to them as part of the talk. So anyway, I used to go off and find, the only thing I could buy in this remote village was raw meat and things like that, and I couldn't cook anything. So that's how I fully got into the raw carnivore or keto, and it was really helpful for me. So other people don't have to do that. It's just something that I found useful. And also with cooking eggs, there's very interesting fats in eggs, and I think overcooking them spoils the eggs. So there's lots of ways I've found about how to eat raw eggs, because for some people the white can be a bit inflammatory. Then in my pictures here, I have got lots of different kinds of eggs. So I really love goose eggs and duck eggs, and you know, there's more to eggs than just what you find in Asda, but that's fine if you're just starting out. And then also I do have plants and things that live in my garden. I bought 5 apple trees from a place in Kent 20 years ago, so I do have apples, and I do like blackberries and things like that. So in the summertime I do include fruits, just because hormonally I find it helps me. So you can't see the data here properly, but luckily all the tests I run some here and some in America. So the top line is just thyroid antibodies, so you can just see some red dots. So it was just saying I had some thyroid antibodies. It wasn't Hashimoto's or anything. It's kind of a long story, but then the dots went green, so that's why I do what I do and eat what I eat, because I like to measure everything as well. So definitely when it comes to carnivore and raw carnivore, it's really good for autoimmunity, and a lot of other people will agree with this, that one of the strengths of carnivore is the autoimmunity. But however, breathing exercises are also equally strong. So with me and my thyroid and my antibodies, though I did other things as well, but just for people who are interested in autoimmune and antibodies and thyroids, definitely raw carnivore's got a lot to offer. And also for things like hypothyroidism, sometimes a cyclical keto diet can be better. Then I've got my special soup experiments, because when I was in Atlanta, was a butcher, a halal butcher, that you could pretty much buy anything from. So I made this special soup, and this is a graph showing my testosterone levels for women. So this has been this is the lady level. So as you can see, it went up. So you can work out for yourselves what I might have bought and put in my special soup. You can't buy lots of these things in this country, but again, with carnivore and organs and glands and things, and oxtail and picking bones and eating like our ancestors did, there's more than just eating liver and heart, or just ribeyes and stuff like that. So there's lots of things you can do for your own hormones by investigating sort of the more glandular side of carnivore. And then I just I had to turn back to put this reference into reference my friend and colleague Ashoya. She is part of the PKD, and she has loads and loads and loads of books on cooking, and it's very carnivore. And I'd probably say of all of the medical methods, Zofia Clemens is part of this community as well. So Ashoya has lots of books, and then I do know her quite well, and we do chat. So I don't agree with necessarily cooking all the time. I will eat cooked meat, but Ashoya and Zofia eat all kinds of interesting animal parts as well and cook them. And it sounds absolutely disgusting, but then when it comes to medical success, I would just say the PKD does really well. And with Ashoya, I asked her, how do I share your book? Where can I find it? She said, it's on my website. And I thought, well, that's not very helpful, because you've got like a really awkward name as well. So anybody who wants the book, because I didn't have time to put the link in, but anybody who really is into carnivore and wants to explore different ways of doing it, definitely. She's got about 3 books now. So yes, she's quite easy to find on LinkedIn, and a lot of people know each other in the carnivore community, so we can easily find the website, because she's Hungarian, like Laszlo Boros and Gabor Somali and Albert St. Georgi. So obviously I really like and admire Hungarians. So then I can go back to the Pilates and the keto. So I found that Pilates and keto have got loads of similarities, because a lot of the time people will say, oh, I did keto for 3 weeks and it was shit and I felt crap and it didn't work. Well, I've heard that loads of times about people, oh, I did Pilates and it was shit and it made everything worse. And then I found out they just did it in a leisure centre with 30 other people, with somebody who'd qualified a week ago and thought they were doing Pilates. It can be the same with keto. Some people, they think keto's something and they do it and it's not keto at all, and they just won't give it a chance. Also, it's like Pilates and keto and diet. Sometimes just do it off the internet at your own risk. There's lots of really experienced people who you can talk to, like Stephen and Phil and Rich, and people who will be able to help you sort of do it properly. And it's the same with Pilates and movement. Some people, I'll ask them to do something, and I've got no idea how their brain invented that movement. So I have to go over and handle them or adjust them. So a lot of the time, this even happens with food, that people sometimes have no concept of how much or what time should I eat or all sorts of things. So you really do have to give it a chance. Also, there's loads of different kinds of Pilates, whether you do Pilates on the reformer and chair, so that's the Pilates that looks like sex dungeon stuff. And I don't care, because obviously people come to the Pilates studio, they go, oh, it's a sex dungeon. I'm like, yeah, like the 500th person who said that, so I'll just laugh along with it. So that kind of Pilates might really be for somebody, but somebody else like my mother would absolutely hate having it lying on her back and having her legs opened with some straps and drawing circles. Whereas my mother really likes doing Pilates on a chair or on the Fitball. So it's like these keto diets and carnivore, there's so many flavors, and you have to give things a chance. And maybe you hurt yourself a bit because you did actually do it wrong. And also, the other thing about it is, just beware of cultists. Like, it's not a religion, and I'm not going to go into this because it kind of spoils the vibe. But lots of mean things people can do and say about people. So people who are new to this or don't know anybody yet, reach out to people here about help with your carnivore. Just be really careful about some of the stuff that people tell you to do online. It's the same with the Pilates and then the cultists. And just because you really like, you might really want to, I don't know, eat a bacon sandwich and actually have real bread, and then people attack you and say, oh no, you've betrayed the carnivore god and you must be sacrificed immediately. So you just need to be careful of stuff like that. And then also, there's actually zero, back to the Pilates again, there is no publications at all on PubMed to do with Pilates at all. Yeah, I got sent people from top surgeons, back surgeons all the time, a lot of GPs in the UK. If someone's got a bad back or a bad neck or whatever, oh, just go to Pilates. And it's like really common now. The GPs will do Pilates as well. I also worked with quite a lot of women who had breast surgery, as in cancer, and then even the really difficult one where you have to reconstruct a breast from a lat muscle. So I ended up with loads of those ladies to work with, because the surgeon thought, oh, this is better than the physio. Not that I was any good, it's just one of these things that makes me laugh, that there's 6,000 publications in PubMed about keto, yet of course it's all bollocks to doctors, whereas there's no publications at all for Pilates in PubMed, and loads of doctors highly rate it or even do it themselves. Right, so we're getting near to the end now. So I wanted to, on my last few days of Atlanta, do something really American in America with Americans. So I bought myself a custom wedding cake from Walmart. So for Walmart, I actually happened to find a news bulletin the same day. So what it says was, cookie dough canister exploded in man's rectum during shoplifting incident in Kentucky. And that was in Walmart as well. So you can like picture Walmart in your head if you don't know what it is. Asda is owned by Walmart actually, but Walmart's like a gigantic, it's like a cross between Asda and Costco, but then all Americanized as well, with 10 times as more weird but delicious food that's absolutely terrible for you. So I did eat the cake. I'm doing it for likes and clicks, of course, because I filmed it and it's going to be for making content. Because if people do stuff of eating sardines, then I'm going to make my own more entertaining comment. Because that can be a bit serious, and I've got like slightly more relaxed lately. So anyway, there's a last picture of me eating my cake with a squirty cream, but it's fine because I'm having my 5 a day because I've got some blueberries. And then, of course, I had to have the Diet Coke in the picture because I always see that people having a big, massive feast. But oh yeah, it's fine, I've got a Diet Coke. But I'm not taking the piss out of anyone with this Walmart thing. It's just going to be a reel about, and it'll end up being something about mitochondria and physics and stuff. But you know how it is these days. It's getting harder and harder to get your message out, so you have to be funny and creative, and that's what that's for. The cake was actually quite nice. It cost about $70, and it was like it's the picture doesn't really show how big it is. And on the top it says, "I'm in love with Atlanta," whatever the fuck that is. So, but the person that made the cake for me was like, "Oh, you know," like thinking like Atlanta was an actual person, but it's like, that's just America for you. So anyway, I always run labs when I'm in America because it's way, way cheaper, and I live really close to Quest, which is like a diagnostics place. And yes, I do run labs here, but it's just a bit more difficult and awkward. So anyway, the top graph, you can see lots of reds. That's my total cholesterol. And then, oh, look, we've got a green dot that suddenly appeared. My triglycerides, they always stay kind of low. And then also my LDL, you can't see the numbers, but the last one is an all-time low for me. So what I did was I ran the labs the day after I ate. I didn't eat the whole Walmart cake, obviously. So what this data basically says is that eating a custom wedding cake from Walmart lowers your cholesterol and LDL 30 times quicker than statins and twice as much. So that's why you have to be like really careful with all of these data and this stupid nonsense about cholesterol, because I measure things pretty religiously, and if anybody looked at those numbers, they'd be like, "Oh wow, that's so brilliant, what did you do to get your cholesterol and your LDL done?" "Oh yeah, I just ate a Walmart cake covered in squirty cream, and I had some Diet Coke and some blueberries." So it's a bit like Dave Feldman's experiment with the Oreos, because sometimes the more people that repeat the experiment, the less people can say, "Oh yeah, Dave Feldman eating the Oreos and having the perfect LDL. Oh, it's an N equals 1. So there we go. Then I also do other things as well. Like I have tried the sugar diet, because that's another thing. There is science and to do with that, with FGF21. And like everything, it has its uses, but like just eating sardines all the time or just butter, just doing the sugar diet all the time would just not be a good idea for teeth. But it does have uses. And then I measured my insulin after doing the sugar diet, and it was actually at an all-time low of 3.4. But it was just an experiment, because I really don't want to have dental work or anything. But I'll always try something, and I'll always learn the science, because I know no matter what, somebody's going to ask me. So the moral of the story is, some labs can be useful, and other ones can be the massivest red herring ever. And the last one here, I've just got some HSCRP, so that's a marker for inflammation that you could get everywhere in the world, including here, which isn't very good for blood tests. So mine are both okay and green, so it's 0.9 and 0.5. So I didn't damage myself doing my experiments with the Walmart cake and the sugar diet. But it doesn't mean it's a good idea. It just means that some people want to just do keto and carnivore, and I'm fine with that, and other people like me are really curious. But fundamentally, for all the reasons I've told you, I'm always going to do keto because I just know too much. So I wouldn't want to eat a load of deuterium and glucose, just because in my little tiny brain, that's what scared me off the sugar or puts me off, is the deuterium. Different people have different reasons of why they predominantly stick to keto or carnivore. But like I've told you in this talk, it's, if you do deviate, it's not the end of the world. Then the other thing about how to gain 30 pounds in 30 days in Atlanta is, and this could work in the UK as well, bliss points. So when you buy food that's been processed, even processed meat food or sausages, the food companies are very clever, and they know how to hack our brains and get us to overeat. And then sauces, they're just terrible. The Americans are way worse because they've got way nicer sauces and way more of them. And then what we'll come into in a moment, the not labelling of food in Britain and in America with a little story. So yeah, I just made a picture there. So I have 3 sauces and then some soft-boiled eggs. So by sometimes using sauces or too much mayonnaise or whatever, there's tons of them. Like, I can't even begin to talk to you about the Americans and the sauces. I could make something that was quite healthy, really unhealthy by accident, even though the sauces are keto. Certain people, me massively included, have to be really careful with sauces. Then we've got the great sugar-free gummy experiment. So the Americans absolutely love gummies. I've never seen so many gummies. So I did try some, but because I wear a CGM all the time, the so-called sugar-free gummies, I can swear to you they're not sugar-free at all. Because what that picture's showing is my blood sugar, and it's basically made a great big mountain, like really bad. That's like a very big spike. So I tried different brands, but like I said, I don't want to I don't want to hurt myself with gummies just for the sake of data. But anyway, this actually covers all other keto foods or things which are not meat or vegetables or fish. When you buy something and you don't know what it is and it says keto, how do you know? And if your blood sugar is going to get spiked to hell, it's going to really disrupt your ketone production. So it's just an example of why a CGM can be more helpful than a ketone meter, and why it's just better to make food yourself. Even all the keto treats I showed you, those are all homemade, and they're made out of Beth's book, so I know exactly how much is in everything. Well, when you get into the planet or the world of keto snacks and treats and shit, you've got no idea sometimes. So that's the thing, the gummies are not sugar-free. I don't really want to do the test in the UK again, but I think we probably import the American gummies. Oops, then they have some even more crazy gummies, which have got, apparently they're all psilocybin free, and they're magic mushroom gummies. So it's like, well, what's in them instead to make your head explode? And then they have all sorts of THC gummies, which is really dangerous because you can just buy them in the garage. So people just buy them and eat them, and goodness knows whether people are stoned or not when they drive. But the point is that it's not just Americans that don't label things properly. Lots of other people do it as well. So when it comes to certain things, it really is RTFL, read the effing label, or just avoid them and just make your own food. Then now back to the keto thing. So another question I get a lot is, oh yeah, I'm doing keto or carnivore, but I'm always hungry, or I keep binging, or what can you do to help? So that's where me and my quantum biology comes in, because sometimes people have an issue with too much artificial blue light, because that's going to push cortisol and insulin up. So it's going to dysregulate blood sugar and cause blood sugar roller coasters and cravings, especially in the evening where people are sitting around screens under artificial light when the body's expecting darkness. That's when a lot of cravings or binging happens. And definitely from my point of view as a physicist, I don't actually think it can actually be the light, not a person that's got low willpower or they're a bad person. It's like, it really can be the light bulbs and using screens for some people. Then also artificial light lowers dopamine, which is very important for addictive behaviours and other things, and it also lowers melatonin and trashes it. So if people get a terrible night's sleep because of terrible light hygiene or light in the bedroom, like I said before, it's going to mess up your melatonin, so you won't sleep properly, but it's going to mess up your mitochondria and your metabolism. And there's loads of studies on insulin resistance and obesity to do with light at night. So no matter what, there's always more. It's really important to get morning light for thyroid and leptin signaling, and there's actually, I haven't put the papers in this presentation, but there's about 4 now that show that getting morning light lowers BMI and helps with the leptin and ghrelin signaling. So there's a lot that the light can do to help. And also, with UV light is how we make melanin. It's more than just a suntan. It's part of the leptin melanocortin pathway, which regulates body weight and appetite. And also that that peptide melanotan 2 that people use, that's probably something that people might have heard of as a ligand for the leptin melanocortin pathway, and people use melanotan 2 as well for managing appetite. It's sometimes called the Barbie drug, but it's much better to get regulate your leptin and your appetite naturally from the sun. But it's always nice to try and relate things into something that people may have heard of, and a lot of people have heard of, those tanning injections are really dangerous and are going to kill you. They're actually really interesting classes of medication, but it helps people to link melanin, leptin, sunlight together into appetite. Let's see. Yeah, then another important thing about appetite is there's lots of studies showing how low vitamin A and low vitamin D can be a part of obesity and leptin resistance. So vitamin A is being demonized because, unfortunately, being a fat-soluble vitamin, it got attacked and got rid of in the Ansel Keys time when all fat was bad. I haven't got time to go into the vitamin A toxicity that people talk about, but artificial blue light is going to do something called photooxidize your vitamin A. So it basically damages it because retinol absorbs blue light. So yes, it can become nasty and oxidative, but it wasn't the vitamin A's fault. It was the blue light that caused the photoreaction, because our biology it's not designed for LEDs and kind of single spectrum, just blue light on its own. So our retinol or our vitamin A it's not designed to deal with it, and it's just the nature of physics that it absorbs way more light than it should at that wavelength, and then it's going to damage the retinol molecule, which can then go on to be damaging in the body. And the other important thing is, when we go out in the sun to make vitamin D, we actually make 15 forms, and the supplement form's just one. And then the sun helps our body to make at least 12 different versions or flavours of vitamin A. So definitely vitamin A supplements are dangerous. That's pretty much known. And then the sun is very helpful for regulating our vitamin A, but the vitamin D we make from the sun is completely different from the tablet. And we do have a bit of a problem here making vitamin D, because we don't have UVB or ultraviolet B light all year round, and also it can be cloudy here as well. So we have to maximise the time. Like today, this is a good day today for making vitamin D. You can't make vitamin D right now because it's only, the UVB is only out for some of the day, so you can't make it at sunrise or sunset. You have to look in an app to see when the UV index is over 3, and that's when you can make vitamin D. So with quantum health and quantum biology, yes, people know they should go out in the sun more, but then there becomes nuances. Right, so this is a little video and poem that I made. So it says, making vitamin D in the sun, I thought it would be fun to drone spy on my chum while she sunned her bum, but alas no delight, she was inside under bad light. So there's a little video, it probably won't play, and so this is what happened. So that's me and my drone. So I'm going to add a little bit more humour into things, but the question was, because luckily the writing covers me up naked, because she got really angry the first time I made the video. She was actually sunbathing, so I had the drone footage going up, and she said, no, you can't possibly use that. And I said, yeah, but the text is covering you. And it's like, yes, but people will know it's me. And I'm like, but how will they? They'll just see like a really rubbishy footage. It's like the point is trying to get a message across. So anyway, so with that, the truth is, naked sunbathing, does it have extra benefits? Yes, massively, especially for things like fertility and sort of more deeper signalling in the body. So even if stupid people like James Smith PT online make jokes out of people getting their bum holes out in the sun, he's actually completely wrong. There's massive benefits to getting bits and things out in the sun. Yes, you can't just do it everywhere, but it is true that it's massively helpful. So that's what the nakedness and the vitamin D video was all about, because there are certain conditions. I think Mary Ruddock alluded to it earlier. If eating eyeballs only was going to help you recover from something, you do it. For some people, naked sunbathing is going to be a big key part of their recovery, or it's just part of their health journey. So yes, it is true that naked sunbathing does offer other benefits. I'll have to skip over leptin for now. And then, yeah, I'm going to have to skip over the walking. So this was just more for like assuming people are just starting out with a health journey, and also I'm running out of time. Right, so here I'm saying this is we are Leeds or TAFs United, because America is amazing, and a lot of people like me and Arnold Schwarzenegger always wanted to go to America and work there and live there, and had fantasies and ideas about it. When you actually do manifest your own dreams and end up being able to go there and live there when you want, you realise actually there's nothing wrong with Yorkshire or Wales, where I'm from, or Britain. I'm half New Zealander as well, but the South Island has similar climate to Britain. So there's lots of reasons, from health reasons, why I'd never live there. So they really do have the most horrific artificial blue light pollution. Like, people don't turn their swimming pool lights off. It's lit up like a Christmas tree. So no matter how much blue blocking glasses you've got or curtains, other people's pollution gets in. So they have no concept of of wasting it. And it just upsets me because I just think it's a waste of electricity as well. And also it really hurts the wildlife because all that artificial light, all the butterflies and birds and bats and mice and everything, they all have a circadian rhythm. And there's way less wildlife in America than there should be. So definitely it's not just the pollution, it's the light. Also, they have way more non-native EMFs than us, so that's electropollution or electromagnetic pollution. So without scaring people or whatever, your mitochondria really hate Wi-Fi, phones, Starlink and everything like that. We can't do a lot about it, but we can manage our phone use because our mobile phone is the worst emitter of EMFs, especially because we have it so close to us. So even if you do naked sunbathe and get your bits out in the sun, you'll ruin it all by having a phone on all the time near your bits. So just turn it into airplane mode, or just put it away from them. Then the USA's got much less magnetism than we have because they're closer to the equator. So as you've learnt now, even if you maybe have forgotten, that magnetism makes electrons move faster, and when Dr. Bonnelly did his experiments with magnetism, mice ate more. People actually went psychotic if they were isolated from the Earth's magnetic field. So we have more of that here. In Finland and Greenland, they have even more magnetism than we do. But then people always say, well, how come they're healthy if they've got terrible light? Well, they've got magnetism, and we use magnetism when the light isn't around, like at night or in Finland or Greenland, and they're kind of healthy people. The USA is the leaf blower and glyphosate and spraying capital of the world. So that's one thing people may not know, that glyphosate's now classed as an organic compound because they're playing on the fact it's an organic chemistry, as in it's a carbon chemistry molecule. So they can spray glyphosate all over crops now in America and call it organic. So don't buy American produce. I won't eat plants when I'm there. I did just when I did the sugar diet experiment, but I felt very uncomfortable. It was eating American fruit that disturbed me more than the fact it was sugar. Then the other thing is that, as I was alluding to with the gummies, I've just scratched the surface of the gummies and the supplements and the weird stuff that I've found. And then a lot of the time, they don't even tell you what's on the label. So loads of things are not sugar-free, like L&T, that mineral stuff that people like, that's not sugar-free. Just wear a CGM and you'll find out. And then Americans use way more meds than we do, and it's just so standard just to dish them out. And 75% of meds are they disrupt circadian genes, and then a lot of others are mitochondrial toxins like statins are metformin, SSRIs, and they just have way more of every kind of med than us. They do have a pavement shortage, so it's really hard to go walking. They spray glyphosate and bug spray everywhere, so grounding with bare feet becomes a problem, but you can use grounding straps. This is what's on my sandal. The food there is too nice. They think our food's disgusting. I understand why they got that idea from the rations in the war, but it really is next level with the tastiness. So the food scientists in America are obviously way cleverer than ours. So that's a good reason for me not to live there as well. Then the inflation is kind of terrible because I always look at prices of meat and things in different countries to compare. So we have a pretty good deal in this country for meat. And then this is what the Americans think of us, and they really do. We've got Freddie Mercury, Ken Dodd, and Esther Rantzen, and I can understand why they have their thoughts about the bad teeth. So with like Ken Dodd, because I have to go on the M6 a lot, I always think of him because there's still the roadworks always on the M6 that he was taking the piss out of 40 years ago. And I used to watch That's Life, and I do actually really like Esther Rantzen, and I believe, isn't she applying for some kind of, or wants euthanasia and wants to go to Switzerland because she's got, I think, terminal cancer. So that's really sad because I had to look it up just to get a picture. So even though I take the piss out of Americans all the time, they also take the piss out of us. But they actually really do think that we all have bad teeth and we all drink tea and we all know the Queen. So here's, like, I do love Britain regardless of the clouds, and then my cup that I made, I just want to drink tea with Freddie Mercury on it. I don't drink tea very often, just sometimes. Then this was a cake I got made for one of my Pilates clients called Tony. So it says, if it's not from Yorkshire, it's shite. So I'm just going to end with that. Actually, I just do like America really because my godchildren live there and it's fun and I always wanted to work with them. I have affiliations with American companies, just to be transparent. The two companies do sponsor my YouTube channel, but I have to earn money somehow, so I do in other ways. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you found this interesting.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Brilliant. There's time for a few questions, a couple of questions, not many.
I think what happened when I did my talk at the Vegan Festival, they loved it so much. They said, "Please, can you go and re-record your talk and put it on YouTube to have access to the slides?" Because a lot of people just said, "I didn't know whether to write or listen," or and over time I've got neater and better with slides. So it is something I could do. Or if you think the talk's okay and somebody caught all the slides and the audio, that might be nice to give to people.
It's there. It'll be there, yeah. Okay, question. Gummy bears, by the way, just not even the Ganji ones, but if anyone hasn't read, look on Amazon for gummy bears review, sugarless gummy bears, My Dinner with Andrea. There's some people who write reviews that are so, but that is seriously hilarious. The
gummy bears bouncing here and there and everywhere.
No, they just give you a problem with your arse, don't they? The sugarless ones.
Oh yeah, well you get it's like a laxative.
Yeah. But My Dinner with Andrea.
It's the best way to wait. I was going to say something really awful about getting up early because someone shat the bed, and learning to see the sunrise. No, it did actually happen to one of my clients. It's fine. And she did laugh about it and say, "Oh, I've never seen the sunrise before. It's really beautiful. I'm going to do it every day now. You were right after all." I was like, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, just stay away." It was the sugar-free jam that happened with her. I haven't seen that famous jam for a while. But yeah, just be really careful of all the sugar-free stuff. Yeah.
Is there any benefit in using a sunbed in the UK winter?
That's a really good question. Yes, I would say it's one of these things, artificial ultraviolet light. With a sunbed, the laws are very heavily regulated, so they are actually reasonably safe-ish, as long as you follow the instructions and don't do them every day. Also, whenever you use ultraviolet, you have to always use infrared and near infrared at the same time, because out there, the UV light is coming at you with all the rest of the sun. So if people just use UV light by itself, it can be a bit problematic, whereas to make it as natural as possible, you'd use a near infrared as well. Some sunbeds now have the red tubes in, that some of the mega suns do, and then there are things like a Spurty lamp that you can buy that's been around since the 1930s, and it's medically proven vitamin D light. So people buy those and sometimes use them outside or with a window open, or they just get a little red light panel as well. It's just the way in which there's no light that exists in life that's just by itself. That's why the blue light's such a problem, because it's not evil blue light, it's just when it's by itself without the rest of the spectrum. And then when it comes to ultraviolet A, you can use bug zappers and backlights whenever you want for better lighting inside, because they're so low powered. And for some people with depression, definitely the sunbeds are a lifesaver for them. But then when it comes to vitamin D, if people make enough in the summer, that's a storage form, and the body will turn that into active vitamin D over the winter. So even if the storage D goes down, it doesn't actually mean you've got low vitamin D. You have to test the active D, or if you know you went away to Spain for 3 months and built up a lot of vitamin D, that'll supply you for the winter. And then there are foods that contain vitamin D as well. But no, I think sunbeds have their place here, and they can be really useful, and there's ways to make them safer as well. So yeah, that's a really good question. I get that one a lot. Yeah.
Could you repeat what it would be good to use for indoor lighting instead of LED?
Okay, so with indoor lighting, it's better to get an incandescent light bulb. And then the other thing is, if you open the windows, that lets the natural light in, because with light being a photon, and our sensitivity to photons, just having the windows open, even if you've got LEDs on, that'll dilute some of it. But the best thing to do is just turn them off, and over time just get a different light. They're much worse after sunset and before sunrise. But that's kind of quite a long question to answer. But if somebody's got LEDs, you can open the window, that'll like dilute it with some of the natural light, or go back to incandescence. There's lots and lots of circadian lighting coming out now, so there's all sorts of things like sky portals, and people like Scott Zimmerman and Dr. Martin Moore-Reed, he knows a lot about all of this. So this is not, the people are finding out now about the artificial light, so there's lots of options.
Hi. Thank you very much for your talk and for all your work. I have two very, very quick questions. One, I got some friends into all of this stuff, and actually one friend the other day was telling me that he was structuring his water in the outside, like with a glass bottle.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
Drinking. And I don't know, I've heard both things. I read Pollack's book, and he says that it structures the infrared and UV structures the water, and then that's super good. But I swear I heard someone, I don't know, Jack Cruz, no, maybe not Cruz, but someone, that he was saying that maybe that structure, when you drink it doesn't maintain. Is it good to do that?
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, distill the water, put minerals in it, because you need minerals to structure. Put it out in the sun in glass on the ground. There's way more to water structuring, because you're not doing anything magical. You're just making dead water that's been treated be back how water would occur naturally. Because outside springs, the water's moving in vortices. It's exposed to light. It's in a muddy riverbed, so just making structured water, I could do a whole hour on it, but you're not making something special, you're restoring the water to its natural form. So yeah, I do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Super quick, DDW, is it good for people, healthy people, to drink some deuterium depleted water? I read Gabor Somlai's book, I think it's called, and he said something, but I drank it and I felt nothing. So I paid a lot of money, and I don't know if
I don't know. I suppose sometimes it depends on the time of year and what you do, because if people do a keto diet and go outside a lot and have saunas, their deuterium's not going to be high anyway. And also it depends on what parts per million you diluted the water to, because you don't just drink it neat out of the bottle, you do a protocol. So I think it depends, and it also depends how long you did it for, and maybe you didn't have high deuterium in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, because that's what I always say to people. Yes, people who know my channel know that Light Water sponsor me, but a lot of people I say it's much better to only use the DDW later, do the free stuff first. So maybe you've done lots of things right, but you can get your deuterium measured in this country. Osmio Water do it. Also, it just depends how long and what ppm you did. I'd have to know the protocol.
It was 25 and 18, like.
Oh yeah, that's not the right way to do it.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
kind of you start at you'd start off at 120 parts per million, then you'd go down, because if you just drink it neat, it's not the way that biochemistry works. So yeah, we can unpack that, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think in Gabor's book he doesn't. Maybe it was the 109 water.
No, it was the second one, but I didn't listen.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
The last one. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hello. I was just wondering, mostly I live in Nigeria, it's tropical country, and I know there's benefit to UVA and UVB lights. I asked on ChatGPT, and they're saying what UVA do and what UVB does, and trying to think since how do you meet the two? At what time of the day?
Oh, you need, there's, the way it works is, so for ultraviolet A, just so everyone benefits from the answer, it's for making dopamine, serotonin, nitric oxide, regulating thyroid, and alpha MSH, and then ultraviolet B, that's for making vitamin D. So there's, after sunrise, there's going to be the sunrise, and there's going to be a gap of maybe an hour to 90 minutes, and then the UVA will start to rise, and then later on from that, the UVB is going to be there as well. So you basically need either a My Circadian app or D-Minder to look to see when the UV is, or you can find out, ask ChatGPT, when is the sun at 10 degrees, and then it'll tell you the time, because when the sun angle's 10 degrees, that's when the UVA is out. And then the UVB, it'll even tell you in the iPhone weather app, because it's when they'll be in the UVI section, it'll show you like a big hump, or there are apps that you can get that have got it all built in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I normally would do 10 to 11, thinking I met a little of UVA and UVB. I get often happen.
Yeah. So what's better is like to see the sunrise, and then you want to catch the UVA rise when there's just UVA by itself, because it's got its own special, it's part of the sequence. And then when the UVBs arrive, the UVA is still there as well. And then you want to make sure that you are out enough in the UVB to make vitamin D. So I definitely just look in an app, or I've got quite a lot of information about this, because people, there's, like I said, there's more nuances, and it's not difficult to do it better. It's just sometimes people need tools to understand, oh yeah, I didn't know, some people didn't know they can't make vitamin D at sunrise and sunset like my mum and dad. So I think it's just understanding. So just definitely getting an app would be helpful. D-Minder's free. And then for the UVA, I sometimes can guess based on when the sunrise was, but it does change in Britain really quickly, because we have very unstable light cycles. The winter is very dark for a long time, and then in the summer we have really long summers. So the only way to learn is you have to get the app to help a bit, and then after a while you'll sort of know for yourself-ish.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi Sarah, can you tell us what the best kind of water filter would be if you're drinking tap water?
I just use a distiller, because it's just they're not very expensive, and the filters can't deal with a lot of what's in here.
And then you have to add minerals afterwards.
You can just add sea salt. That's the most basic, and that's going to be fine. And then with minerals, it's the kind of stuff that it's not an expensive supplement, and it's kind of just a few drops. So with filters, I can't confidently recommend anything, because even the ultimate water pitcher, I don't use filters, so I wouldn't recommend them. Reverse osmosis works as well. So yeah.
How much salt do you put in?
Well, it's like it's to
distilled?
taste. Well, you distill it, and then some people like it very salty, like Darko Valchek level, and you just you can salt it and mineralize it to taste.
No, I just wondered about the amount to just kind of remineralize it enough so that, I mean, I drank distilled water for about 5 months, a gallon a day, and years ago, and I was vegan as well. And I think I depleted zinc, so I lost my sense of taste
you'll just wash out all your minerals, because water's a solvent. So you just have to.
It's just a ridiculous. There's that website Aquarius, the water bearer. Just ignore it. Never get sucked into that, dude.
No, just because lots of the very good quality salts have contained minerals, but then it is worth investing in liquid minerals. Like Carol's shop over there has got some. She could be able to guide you. And it's not an expensive supplement. And I think I'm really into water, and then there's all sorts more you can do later, but I just don't trust filters, so.
Anyone else?
Yeah, one more.
Thank you. Just a quick question. These days, all vehicles in this country are running with LED lights. I understand that could be a real time bomb in the sense that people are going to get troubled and unwell as a result of having to deal with this.
Oh no, I completely agree. It's all about why it's really important to educate people about light, because some people do listen, and then certain people like myself will then on purpose put the old kind of bulb back in the car or get a classic car again. So yeah, I agree, and they're stupidly bright to the point where people who don't know anything about quantum biology say it's hurting their eyes, so it's stupid. Yeah, I agree.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for your talk. We're going to try and get home now before midnight. It was very lovely to meet you.
Oh, I really appreciate that you've stayed just for me.
Yeah,
I'll
you
remember
bet.
that.
We'll be in touch. We'll do round 2 soon. And
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. See you later, everyone.
Yes.